Welcome back into the Pig Trail Show, and welcome into another Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. And Kevin, we're here to recap an impressive 2-0 week, and we'll start with that victory over number 14 Michigan in Madison Square Garden. I'll tell you what, 40 minutes were played. It felt like, 19 different basketball games were played throughout. Arkansas trails by 15, comes back, goes up by 18, almost blows it, but you know what? No pictures on the scorecard. They get a win, and a big one at that. The first ranked win of the season. The Razorbacks take down the Wolverines. In MSG was an unbelievable game, just all over the place. But again, the key, a win for the Razorbacks.
A roller coaster of emotions, but you had to win it. Arkansas had one shot after losing to Baylor and Illinois, one shot in 13 non-conference games to pick up a quality win. And it is a brutally stacked SEC in basketball. It's better in basketball than it is in football. There's an argument this is the toughest any conference has ever been. This 10 or so games into non-conference play. We'll see how it plays out, once league play starts. But you had to get this one. I think this game is going to be as important as any when we look back on the season if things continue to trend better for Arkansas.
Yeah.
You mentioned a first win over a ranked team. It was also Arkansas's only quad one win, and will be. It'll stand that way when we move through and finish out this 13 game non-conference schedule. But you continue to see Arkansas by bringing back Jonas Adu. Trevor Brazile really starting to understand what his value is, especially in some of these blue-collar departments and some of his defensive versatility. And then I look at a guy like Nelly Davis, who really hasn't broken out with a volume kind of scoring game, and he looks more comfortable with the shots he is getting. He's not taking bag shots. His strokes coming around. You look at DJ Wagner and Boogie Flan, 1A as dueling lead guards, and both providing that offense. There was just so many things that are starting to emerge. Oh, and let's not forget that was Arkansas's third straight win. We're going to talk about UCA on Saturday, much easier game. 4-0 in December. Arkansas's got two more games left in this month against mid-majors back home at Bud Walton Arena. Take care of business, Jacob. And Arkansas is going to go 6-0 for the first unbeaten December in the program in 4 years.
Wow.
That's a little bit significant when it's not just cream puffs that you're feasting on. You went on the road to beat a Miami team in the ACC SEC Challenge. Yeah, not a very good Hurricanes team, but you found a way to start winning games out of your home building. And then the Michigan game, again, I think is going to be one of those games that's up there on the mantle at the end of a year if things go your way.
Yeah, and I think we were talking here in the office where, we were kind of joking around. We were saying, who is this basketball team? Because you began to see with Adu playing the way that he was, with Brazile playing the way that he was. If you go back and you rewatch that first 10 minutes of the second half where Arkansas was imposing its will on Michigan, and I remember at one point Jay Billis just said, man, Michigan is rattled, right? And when you saw Arkansas turn up the intensity, and it was kind of a growth moment in real time. When you're playing an MSG, you're playing on that type of stage, national eyeballs all over the place. And it's not that you couldn't see what this team could be, but it was just so impressive when you consider Adu was hampered with illness, and yet this team, they looked like a team that was able to hang with, the teams that we thought they would at the beginning of the season. And it was a growth moment for this team, and a moment for, throughout that game where you could really see what this team has potential-wise.
Well, and you go back to Baylor and even Illinois, Arkansas would get down by double digits. They never ran away or went and hit. They'd always fight back. Had a chance really to beat Baylor, just never led in that game. Couldn't get over the hump. Illinois was a little different, but Arkansas didn't get blown out. They hung around, but they couldn't make free throws, and the margin was 9 or 10, ballooned back to 15. It was never completely – one of those games where you're like, wow, we got destroyed today. And again, Miami was the first baby step. I think, there were some opportunities where Arkansas started. You mentioned that really good stretch where Arkansas took command against Michigan. Then the Wolverines started to run, and Arkansas couldn't get out of its own way. I mean, not blocking out on free throws. That happened on multiple free throw trips. You might see that once or twice in a game, 3 or 4 times, and there might be something in between the ears getting in your way a little bit. Trying not to lose. And so give Arkansas credit, though. The Razorbacks made some big plays. Trevor Brazile with the block and the defensive rebound. Nelly Davis with a couple of late deflections. We know about the game, the one that may have saved that game on a backdoor cut. Really a nice play that was constructed put together out of a timeout by Dusty May. and Nelly's initially beaten, but he hustles and leaves his feet and lunges to make that deflection and really spoil a chance for Michigan to get that game to overtime. So you can find negatives, but you can find plenty of
Yeah.
positives right now. Again, a 4-game winning streak. Arkansas has 2 of those this year. They've won 8 of their last 9. That Illinois game being the loss in the middle there. Arkansas's team last year didn't have a single 4-game winning streak. So there's a lot of things right now. That quad 1 win again over Michigan, I can't talk about that enough, because if your season goes the wrong direction, it'll be a blip on the radar. But if it, what this team is starting to show, if they can continue to build on it, that'll be the game you point to and go, that's where they believed.
Yeah, just impressive resiliency again to come back from. It wasn't, they didn't look completely dead in the water, but I mean, it was a 15-point deficit. You started to say, is this going to get ugly here in MSG?
Yeah.
And for them to come back the way they did was really impressive. And again, all the more important resume wise, growth wise, when you talk about just how tough that SEC slate is. Tennessee wins the way they did against Illinois, and they've got 3 mid majors remaining here before the SEC slate, which means more than likely when you open SEC play on January 4th, it'll be in Knoxville against an undefeated Tennessee team that's number 1 in the country, and that's just a preview of what's to come for the SEC slate. It's going to be tough for the Razorbacks, so that Michigan win was really important. But if the Wolverine game was the all-time dictionary definition of a roller coaster of emotions, the UCA game was not so much. Arkansas raced out to a 22-7 lead, and that was pretty much it. The Razorbacks dominated from start to finish. A nice follow-up after the victory over Michigan.
I think so. And look, let's not forget, in this 4-game winning streak, we've talked a little Miami, talked a lot Michigan. Texas San Antonio, the last true home game at Bud Walton Arena, Arkansas trailed by 8, down 5 at halftime. Now they steamrolled the second half.
Yeah.
So you really haven't had a when do we have a night as a fan base or media covering
Easy
it?
Night.
We're not scratching our head going, which team is who? Arkansas showed up in both halves, inside and out, everywhere imaginable. And the leading scorer, rebounder, and steals guy on the team, Adu Thero, didn't play.
Yeah.
And so you have a 25-point win. You mentioned it. Arkansas got out to that early 15-point lead. You led by 30 plus multiple times in the second half, and you didn't have Thero, your top producer. And it just, again, I think underscores and underlines the fact that guys are starting to get more comfortable. I keep saying this. I think there's the balance on Arkansas's front line, because for a while it was Adu Thero putting his head down and just bully balling his way to the basket. You had Boogie Fland as your most consistent producer in the backcourt game in and game out. And then there were some big Z threes to get him around double digits, not a lot around the paint, not much force inside. And that was what you were living on. Now there's balance. There's balance on the front line where they do start to score in double figures. Trevor and Brazil, back-to-back double-figure games. Some of the plays those guys are making with their paint presence at both ends of the court, you really start to see where this Arkansas team, how much more it can grow and evolve, because I think the guards are feeding off of it. If you look at the assist numbers that both DJ Wagner and Boogie Fland are putting up, if you didn't know they were playing together, you would think one guy was your primary lead guard. And so it even adds to what the front line's starting to do. And I mentioned Nelly Davis, getting into double figure scoring, averaging 10 or more points in the last 5 or 6 games. His 3-point shooting efficiency's gone up. But how about DJ Wagner? Look at the numbers he put up in second halves against both Miami and Michigan. And then another nice and knocking down threes. That second half, his 3-point shooting against Michigan. Arkansas doesn't win that game without that little stretch he had. And then against UCA, we're talking about that game. I know he continues to be efficient and putting up some numbers. So I look at multiple guys in both front court and back court as now you're not sure which one's going to go off. Of course, Thero again leads the team in scoring, rebounding, and steals. But now you've got 6, 7, 8 guys where you're having multiple games of 5 or 6 guys scoring in double figures. You don't know who the leader's going to be, and it's not just 1 or 2 guys carrying you game in and game out where you live and die by their success.
Yeah, and I think that's the larger point, and what Razorback fans should take is really encouraging is it's like you said, it's just every player is starting to get more and more comfortable. Even I look at Carter Knox. I remember a couple of weeks ago, you and I were talking, and we kind of joked. We said the bright side for Carter is it can't get any worse. I mean, he was shooting 15% from the field, right? And he comes out and he scores 14 points off the bench yesterday. Had some moments. He had the big and one against Michigan in the second half as well. And you talk about Boogie Flan, 9 assists, and me, assist to turnover ratio stickler over here. 9 assists, 1 turnover for Boogie, right?
Yeah.
So it's just everybody's starting to get more comfortable. And obviously, I think the thing that you get your eyes drawn to is the frontline guys really starting to make an impact. When you talk about Brazil and Adu, who just were kind of figuring it out, obviously some injury stuff as well. And you saw in flashes in that Michigan game and obviously on Saturday as well, what Adu can bring to the table, what Arkansas thought it was getting from Tennessee just in terms of physicality, rim running, rebounding, and all the above.
Yeah.
It's been impressive, and it's just an overall comfortability that is continuing to grow for this team. And that's what Cal told us was going to happen.
He did say it. I think the other thing is the attrition. Arkansas hasn't really been at full strength. They haven't.
Yeah.
And so it's a double-edged sword. One thing is guys are getting more opportunities. Big Z, even with some of his struggles, while Adu was out, while Brazil was out, are very limited. He had to learn through some fires or things. Some growth he's going to get out of this. Guys like Knox, Billy Richmond, some of the opportunities they're getting. So there's some positives there. And when you're in a 4-game winning streak and you're still not at full strength, you're looking at that going, how good can this team be? I think but the part that makes you a little nervous is how long does that continue? Does that actually bubble into SEC play? Because I can promise you it's going to be hard. That is going to be a gauntlet night in, night out to not be at full strength.
Yeah.
And this is why where I'm a little critical. Calipari told us there'd be nights like this or stretches like this, but he also made the decision to go get 9 players and not go 10 or 11 deep, something that we're not just talking about after the fact. We're just talking points before the season ever started. This will be a problem if there are injuries and illness. Always throw in illness. What's Thiero been dealing with? Illness. And so these are things that affect what you can do. Now, right now, Arkansas with that big win, and you had sandwiched between 2 mid-major games in the state of Arkansas, and then you've got 2 more. And not only do you have only 2 more games in non-conference, but you have a week between games, as you mentioned, against North Carolina A&T. Then you're off 9 days before you host Oakland to close out the 13-game non-con. That's a lot of time for guys to heal up, get treatment, figure out how you're going to get everybody on board and back to start SEC play. Now, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Arkansas in good shape, 4-game win streak, and this team's starting to take form a little bit in front of our eyes, which is always a good thing. Anything else you want to hit before we go, Kevin?
Not really, other than the crowd in North Little Rock at Simmons Bank Arena, 15,500 plus.
Yeah.
I think that's about the capacity. I didn't see an empty seat in the house, and it had the kind of energy that I know Calipari's been craving. I know he's looking at those attendance figures and seeing with his own eyes in Bud Walton Arena. He's been in that building as the opposing coach when it's jam-packed. It'll be like that in SEC play. It was like that in the Kansas exhibition game. But this time of year, in December especially, to see a crowd like that with his team, he talked about it after the game. He said, man, the Madison Square Garden vibe followed by this. He goes, you understand why we've got to play these games here.
Yeah. An energy boost for sure, especially when you're playing a mid-major, when you have any chance whatsoever of a hangover right after a game like Michigan, the big win. A crowd like that really boost the team. It was impressive, the turnout there. But that's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you next week. More Pig Trail Show coming up after the break.